After beginning the season with tougher messaging against pitch invasions, there was talk of life bans being promised, criminal convictions, and yet elsewhere, numerous fixtures have seen fans spill onto the field of play in the last fortnight or so. Yeah. So even though the fans of the clubs who took part in the playoffs at Wembley over the weekend, none of them came near the playing surface.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, we still have seen pitch incursions, and it's worrying. It's worrying because of what it could lead to.
Yeah, I'm in the camp of understanding to some extent why the fans do it, understanding that it's been tolerated, accepted, and almost applauded for 50 years and going on, right? And so with that in mind, you can't just suddenly do a U-turn because of a couple of events that happened during the summer of 21 and subsequently 22. And I look at that and say it's an unreasonable scenario, but I do also believe that football fans, if they're told they shouldn't go on a pitch, they shouldn't do it. But that's like saying a variety of things. And I look at the Wembley situation. If you go to Wembley, you don't have a sense of ownership in the same way that the fans will have when they're sitting in their home stadium in a seat they sat in all season of a football club that they in part believe they own, and other people that own them are just custodians. And you go to a Wembley, it sets up a different framework. I mean, I think a few years ago, I think I'm right, that Millwall fans went on the pitch for a playoff semi-final for all the wrong reasons. But notwithstanding that, I don't know what to do with this, because I'm on your side of the fence, or our side of the fence, which is just do as you're asked. You can celebrate in the same way that Nottingham Forest fans did. It's a choice that you're making. But the other side of the argument is you can't ask these football fans to invest so much economically and emotionally in their football club and then expect to be able to turn off the tap of something that football has condoned and accepted and almost promoted, and broadcasters have celebrated the idea that fans get involved with their football club and burst onto the pitch and celebrate moments of achievement or avoiding of disaster, and then suddenly say on a sixpence, no, we've changed our minds. Now, if you want to do that, Jim, then go the whole hog and make it happen.
Meaning what?
Whatever it takes to stop fans from going on the pitch, then the football authorities are going to have to say to football clubs, that is what you're going to have to do. And and Trevor's going to have to say to people, Trevor Birch, right, this is the blueprint to stop 5,000 fans coming on a pitch when they win a playoff.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to have to require you to do. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, we're going to sanction you. Yeah. Okay, so what's that going to look like then? Fences? Is it going to look like policing at a level that we've not seen before inside football stadiums for one-off games? Is it going to look like that? Because if that's what you want, you can have that and you can probably achieve it. But then you create a temperature of the way that football fans will perceive that they're being treated. But the other side of the argument is, of course, that football fans should just be able to be asked not to come on the pitch. The balance is this, Jim.
They need to learn not to.
But the balance is this, and I find myself falling in between two stools. It's not because I don't want to...
And that surprises me, because I thought you'd be like, Bosh, don't do it.
But no, I don't want them to do it. But I also think there's some things in life that you're not going to be able to stop unless you're really prepared to go all in. And if you really want to go all in and stop it, then okay, fine, let's have this discussion. What that actually involves.
You know how ridiculously irrational it is? Some Evertonians had been very, very sceptical as to whether or not they'd survive in the Premier League. Yeah. They did, thanks to Doucouré's great goal.
Yep.
But they did.
Yes.
So at the end of it all, a bunch of them who think, can't stand Moshiri.
Yeah.
Can't stand them. And the directors are not here today, a bunch of empty seats. And Everton survive. What goes through their minds then? The moment comes, we've made it. We're in the Premier League next season, thank God. Pressure off. I'm going on the pitch.
Yeah.
But that last part is a key part. What is the switch that goes when they say, are you going on? I'm going on. You coming with me? What makes a grown man take his 8, 9, 10-year-old son on the pitch and say, stand there, I'll get a picture of you?
Same thing.
When's he ever going to look at that picture?
Well, who knows? What the same thing that makes grown men cheer for 17-year-old kids kicking a football around like they've just developed a cure for cancer. You know, that they celebrate and lionise footballers and put them in positions that they're not entitled to be in because of their absolute love and belief of a football. How do you explain that people suggest Bill Shankly turns around and says 50 years ago that football isn't life and death, it's more important than that? How do you compartmentalise that thinking?
I think even Shankly knew it wasn't.
Well,
but I mean, at the end of the day, Sam,
maybe
on this particular aspect of football supporters' behaviour, We're not asking much. Stay in your seat. Celebrate to your heart's content. Leave. You've made it. You've survived in the Premier League. Just don't go on there.
Oh, and the case, and you made the point the other day, and you're right to make it, that Nottingham Forest fans are perfectly capable of doing it.
Right.
So the clubs have got to try and communicate, but there will always be a section of fans that are going to do precisely what they want. And there's not much you can do about it. There will always be a section of fans that are going to scream and shout at the poor buggers that own football clubs and tell them how to spend their money. But if you dare tell them how to spend theirs by putting the season ticket prices up, will go absolutely apoplectic. So there is no logic and rhyme and reason. You're asking and seeking for rhyme and reason and logical thinking. And that is not a big commodity in football often. And so with that in mind, I'm in your camp. I think that why do you got to bring flares to the ground? Why have you got to bring flares to the ground? Because we think it increases the experience. Okay, fine, great, but other people don't. And there is always a proportion. But when you've got Sheffield Wednesday fans, they're fine. How many people came on that pitch? 5,000, 3,000? What are you going to do? What are you literally going to do to stop it? I suppose the deterrent will be enforcing of the bans, enforcing of the consequences of their behaviour, which I'm assuming that they'll do.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that they'll do, and then it becomes a choice. Our big fear. And it's a thing that often happens in the media, which is a slippery slope mentality, which is, oh, if you do that, it'll end up in this. If you have this, it'll end up in that. And it will always be the worst case scenario because we're looking at the situation before they want to peep out of you or anyone else in the media about fans invasions until 2 years ago, until the European Championships, until the Man United invasion of the pitch when all that situation was happening in COVID. Other than that, you would have been one of the people in the media, alongside all those gurning twerps that are doing it over the weekend, about the fans going on the pitch saying, not a word about it, not a word of condemnation about it. And now there is. So what do you want to do?
That's not entirely true.
It is true.
No, it's not.
No, I have never heard a broadcaster.
I was on in here on the Monday morning after Hibs Rangers, the Scottish Cup final. It was an absolute mess.
You're talking about an individual set of circumstances, about the behaviour of a group of fans fighting on a pitch, which was absolutely disgusting.
It was horrendous.
Right? But we're talking about a situation where fans are going on the pitch on the whole. We're talking about, on the whole, the majority, if not the nigh on 99.9% of them, are going on for hijinks. Right? And we've turned it into now, players can't be approached for shirts, players can't be approached for that, we mustn't do this, we mustn't do that. And we've morphed it into, well, it could happen.
No, it hasn't morphed into... No. It's nothing to do with the media and the media's treatment of it. They're told not to go on. They're told not to go on. And then we saw some very unsavoury developments, like Vieira in trouble.
We did.
On the pitch at Goodison.
We did.
We've seen... You mentioned Millwall fans for years ago getting on to Wembley. How they managed that, I do not know. I arrived at Wembley yesterday, in amongst a sea of Sheffield Wednesday fans. A sea of them. And I arrived at the media entrance. We see all the stewards arriving, the rest of the people who are working at Wembley that day. And Simon, it is an army of people. So if that's what it takes at the clubs, get that same army of people.
And I don't disagree.
To protect the playing surface.
But I also think there's a mindset difference. First of all, the configuration of Wembley is different. Secondly, you've got fencing there that does help and provide some sort of support. Third of all, you're coming to a neutral environment which doesn't feel like yours. You don't own it. Right, so you don't feel that you've got a sense of entitlement. I know what you mean by that. So I get that, and none of this in what I'm saying, I'm debating it with you. None of what I'm saying is either right or wrong. It's a simple scenario of let's look at it. We are beginning to look like King Canute, right? And we're saying go back, right? So what is it we're going to do? We've said for 50 years, when Ronnie Radford scored for Hereford. Look at the fans on the pitch. We've said when Kenneth Wolstenholme commented on the World Cup in 1960, there's fans on the pitch, they think it's all over. Right? We have said this for years. And now what we're saying to football fans is, actually, this is wrong because we've had a couple of isolated instances. It's a challenge, Jim.
It's a challenge. Alex and Dorset might have nailed it. Give a football club a 5-point deduction at the start of the following season. They won't go on the pitch again. If they've survived and play in the Premier League next season, they won't be going on when they start on -5. Alex, not a bad shout. Not a bad shout. We want everybody to enjoy themselves, Simon. That's not to be forgotten about.
Of course
we want
not.
everybody to enjoy that. I can imagine the exhilaration and relief that Evertonians felt at Goodison at the weekend.
But
the
fans aren't offended.
But that doesn't mean to say you can jump on that turf.
Agreed, Jim. But the fans aren't offended. Other people are offended on behalf of the fans. So when you ask
the authorities are offended. They don't want it to happen.
When you ask the 25,000 fans that didn't go on a pitch at Sheffield Wednesday if they were offended, besides the media backlash and the potential consequences to their football club, most of them will turn around and say, well, they do what they do. I think they're idiots, and we'll do what we do.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.